In 1995, audiences were introduced to the first Disney princess based on a historical figure, Pocahontas, daughter of the Powhatan, a powerful Aboriginal chief who ruled over what is now Eastern Virginia, had her life forever altered when the English established a colony along the James River, aka Jamestown. While this film was responsible for introducing many people, myself included, to the story of Pocahontas, Disney unfortunately doesn't always have the best track record when it comes to historical accuracy or cultural representation. Though, is Pocahontas the film that breaks this rule? No, of course not. The early years of the Jamestown colony were filled with starvation, conflict, and bloodshed. And this is a love story with musical numbers and adorable animal sidekicks. But films about Aboriginal history during the Age of Contact are pretty limited, so this is basically all I have to work with. While the Virginia expedition did leave England in 1607, it actually consisted of 3 ships: the Susan Constant, captained by Christopher Newport, the Godspeed, captained by Bartholomew Gosnold, and the Discovery, captained by John Radcliffe. Though the film's villain is very loosely based on the captain of the Discovery, John Radcliffe never actually served as governor of Virginia, as the Virginia Company of London, the organization that funded the expedition, determined that the colony would instead be ruled by a council of 7 colonists and an annually elected president. However, Radcliffe did serve very briefly as the colony's president, until he began diverting resources from the fort for his own use, including large amounts of food from the colony's dwindling food stores and labor and building materials for the construction of his own personal mansion. Sadly, Radcliffe's mansion was never completed, as he was removed from the role of president in September of 1608 and replaced with John Smith. While this is definitely different from Radcliffe's story in the film, their choice to depict him as an incompetent, self-serving egotist is honestly pretty accurate. To the film's credit, it is correct that the colonists of the Virginia expedition were primarily concerned with making money, either by locating gold and mineral deposits or by finding a passage to the Pacific, both things which did not exist in Eastern Virginia. While the film implies that the English were the first Europeans encountered by the Powhatan people, this isn't true, as in 1570, the Spanish also tried to establish a colony along the James River. Unfortunately, their attempts to convert the Aboriginal population to Christianity, which included kidnapping a child and forcibly converting him against his will, did not exactly endear them to the local population, who soon put an end to their plans of establishing a colony. The Virginia Company actually recommended that the colonists should try to avoid any conflict with the Aboriginal population, as they understood that establishing trade was an essential element to the colony's success, a fact which the characters in the film clearly did not consider.
Leave the savages to me.
You think they'll give us much trouble?
Not as much trouble as Smith'll give them.
We'll kill ourselves an engine, or maybe 2 or 3.
However, despite the Virginia Company's warning, the Powhatan's mistrust of the newcomers, cultural and linguistic misunderstandings, and the colonists' habit of raiding native food stores led to a number of conflicts breaking out between the two sides, a fact which makes the family-friendly ending of the film feel kind of disingenuous. Despite my issues with the film, I will acknowledge that many of the background details, like the homes and fields of the Powhatan people, match very closely with how they're depicted in Smith's writings, which is honestly a nice touch. As the real Pocahontas was believed to be between 10 to 13 years old when she met Smith in 1607, it goes without saying that the pair never had a romantic relationship. Though Smith does speculate that her commitment to his well-being might have been romantically motivated, as she often risked her life to help him, the two parted ways after Smith returned to England in 1609 and didn't meet again until 1616, well after her marriage to fellow Englishman John Rolfe. As it was common for the Powhatan people to have multiple names throughout their lifetime, it's likely that Pocahontas, which some historians translate to mean Little Wanton, was actually a childhood nickname, as most sources, including this illustration by Simone de Beausset, refers to her as Matawaca. Though the film presents him as an unwanted suitor, Pocahontas did actually marry a man named Kocoum. Though because Kocoum only appears very briefly in the historical record, being mentioned only once in William Starkey's book, History and Travel into Virginia Britannia, it's unknown what happened to him or even if he was a real person. Though I guess it's still better than what happened to him in the film. How is this movie rated G? Smith's imprisonment and attempted execution occurred under much different circumstances than in the film, as he was actually captured by the Powhatan's brother while he and his men were looking for a passage to the Pacific. While Smith had the good fortune to be captured alive, unlike the rest of his men, he remained in captivity for over a month, being paraded around to different villages before finally being introduced to the Powhatan, Pocahontas' father, at the capital town of Werowocomoco. It's at this point that Pocahontas enacted her famous rescue, as after enjoying a meal together, Powhatan's warriors placed 2 large stones in front of Smith, and therein laid his head, and being ready with their clubs to beat out his brains, Pocahontas, the king's dearest daughter, when no entreaty could prevail, got his head in her arms and laid her own upon his to save him from death, whereat the emperor was contented he should live. As this was their first meeting, it's unlikely that Pocahontas' actions were motivated by love like in the film, as it's now believed that Smith's execution may actually have been an adoption ritual, as he was later given the name Nantiquod and granted jurisdiction over a portion of the Powhatan's kingdom, essentially making him a subordinate chief. Unfortunately, this did nothing to quell the conflict between the Powhatan and the colonists, as the mistrust between the two groups continued to rage until well after Smith left Virginia. Smith's heroic sacrifice, where he takes a bullet to save Pocahontas' father, is also a film addition. Though Smith did return to England in 1609 after he was caught in an explosion that tore the flesh from his body and thighs. As Jamestown had no doctors, Smith's only chance for survival was to return to England, which, given how much work he put into running the colony, was probably a pretty hard decision to make. Ratcliffe, disgraced by his disastrous term as president, returned to London several months prior to Smith in 1608, though unfortunately he didn't stay away very long, as after the Virginia Company adopted a new charter in May of 1609, which replaced the council and acting president, John Smith, with a single governor, Ratcliffe was given the opportunity to return to Virginia with a clean slate, a decision which proved to be a colossal mistake, as, while on a trading mission with the Powhatan, he and his entire party were ambushed and killed by his warriors, proving that he probably should have stayed in England. While the history that inspired Pocahontas is anything but family-friendly, the filmmakers were still able to create a story that appealed to children without completely glossing over the darker elements of this period in history. Is the film historically accurate? No, but the filmmaker's passion for Pocahontas and her story definitely comes through in the final product. Well, as always, I'm Silver Jade, reminding you to please support your local library. It's where I keep all my research material, and I hope to see you all next time.